Hello, and welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor live stream on photo editing tips. This week we're doing Luminar Neo as our photo editing software. I'm Darlene with Digital Photo Mentor, and if you are new here, welcome. I hope you enjoy it. And if you are returning, as usual, welcome back. So if you would like to participate, you'll see how this goes in a moment. You can actually submit your images and I demonstrate them during the live. I demonstrate how I would approach editing that particular image. So that is the link right there that you would use to submit your images and send in your questions. And you can tell me which is your preferred software that you would like me to demonstrate your image in, whether it be Luminar or Lightroom. So let me hop over into the program and I will be right back to say hi to everyone. All right, let me get over here. I'm just leaving. Remind me to make that bigger when I get editing. Today we're going to be doing photos of birds because I asked for birds, fall, and water, and we're going to be doing photos of birds today. So hi, Danelle, Marty in Wisconsin. Awesome. Catherine is in Texas. Nice. We've got a beautiful fall here happening in Alberta. So I hope those of you that are in this area are out getting some nice fall photos because we're going to do fall next time. And I'll explain, we're going to be changing up the time that we do these lives to Saturday for winter. So we'll be changing that in a couple of weeks. Right? Rob says, what gives? Only one like. So Danelle has ask and you shall receive. So thank you very much for that. Right. Oops. Welcome from Alaska, Deb. Lee, watching from St. Louis, bailing on my local camera club. Thanks so much. Well, hopefully you get to see a recording of the camera club because, you know, you can see a recording of this later. So since you are a member of a camera club, Lee, I'd love to actually mention, maybe Rob can put in the comments in the chat. We actually have programs for camera clubs. So Rob will put a link to that. And he will also put a link on where to submit the photos for you, Danelle, also. So we do have stuff for camera clubs, and I'd love to get in touch with your group, Lee. Okay. Holly, yay, I've got some of your images. I'm not sure if these ducks are yours. So Rob's sharing both of those things. All right, so I'm going to make this bigger before I forget. There we go. Okay, so now you should be able to see my screen a little better. And I'll turn on my little mouse pointer here. One thing I'm going to mention is that there is an update for Luminar Neo that came out today, I believe. And it's pretty much, I have not installed it yet. So first rule of going live is don't install new software before you do that. Because if anything's going to go wrong, that's the time that it's going to go wrong, right? So if you have Luminar Neo, make sure you install this update because it's basically, if you read that, it's about improving the speed of the noiseless plugin or extension if you have that. Okay, so it'll run faster. If you don't have noiseless, there's not much in the update for you, right? So I'm going to tell it to remind me that later, and I'll do it, install it after we're done editing today, right? All right, so we're going to start with some bird photos, and we've got a few ducks here. So we're going to get our our ducks in a row, literally. I know that Brandon is really big on bird photography. It looks like we've got one of Marty's or a couple of Marty's, got a couple of Brandon's, Kelly's, and Daniela. So let's see, as well as Karen's. Oh, and Deb's Eagle as well. Okay, well, Deb's here, so, and Marty's here, so let's do those. All right, so let's start with Deb's Eagle then. So the eagle here is a lovely image, and I want to talk about what I would do to this image and why as well. Okay, so to start, we want to analyze the image a little bit. Looks like it's in nice sharp focus. If I zoom in on him, maybe he's a little bit soft. It looks like maybe the tree is a tiny bit sharper, right? So we're going to do some stuff to sharpen him a little bit. But look, he's giving you the eagle eye. Look at that. Literally, the eagle eye. So the first thing I look at is sharpness. Then I'm looking at exposure, and make sure you have the histogram turned on. You can find it under the view menu if you have it off, and it appears up here at the top. So the histogram is telling me that there's nothing clipping on either end, but there's room to move to the right, meaning I can push the exposure or the highlights up a little bit more that way, right? So that's what I look for. Then I'm going to zoom out and take a look at composition. Okay, how do I want to frame or compose this image to make it stronger? So right now, he's right in the middle of the frame, right? So we could actually go with a central type of composition, which might be interesting. So I'm going to crop before we do anything, and it looks like there might be some dust spots. Okay, so that's what that is there, maybe on the sensor. So I know I'm going to run the erase tool. Okay, so I'm going to start with cropping, and I'm going to try actually a square composition. So we could try just putting this tree and him pretty much right in the middle. And what that does is it gets rid of this extra tree over here, which is kind of taking like a secondary subject almost, and this little stick over here on the left. So let's see what it looks like as a square. I actually don't mind that. So square compositions can be really powerful, right? Let's try another crop. I'm going to undo it, and we're just going to go free form. So I'm not too worried about the aspect ratio now. I just want to crop for maximum impact. Okay. And I have a video that I did on cropping for impact. If you want to share that, please, Rob. So I'm going to come in on this side to get rid of that little bit of that tree that's sticking out. And I want to decide, which way is he facing, right? Now he's kind of facing square on, but he's leaning a little bit this way, right? So do I want to leave more space this way? I think so. So I want to get rid of just that little thing on the corner and then leave the tree a little bit of space that way. Then I want to get rid of some of this on this side so that I put him a bit more off center, okay? And I'm going to come up from the bottom just to get rid of some of these bits on the edges again, okay? So I don't have to clone those out, and it just cleans up the edge. See that thing down there? I could probably go a little farther and come to about there. Now, do you see what I mean by clean edges? I mean no branches or little things like sticking into the frame, right? So if I left it, I'll leave one sticking out so you can see what I mean. Okay, so if I crop it like that, see how we got these little sticky outy bits at the bottom here? I don't know how else to call it, but sticky outy. Okay, so I'm just going to crop them out. Alternatively, I can use the erase tool to erase them. Okay, so now I feel like that's a more powerful composition. Okay, so we're looking up at him. There's still some vertical aspect, and he's got space off to this side. Okay, so he's kind of leaning that way. All right. Now let's deal with the raw develop. Okay, so you'll notice that the raw develop and noiseless raw, get added first. So no matter what you do, if I decided to do enhance AI first, okay, it still adds the raw tools below it. Okay, so I can still go back to do develop, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to start with develop raw. Okay, so we're going to do develop raw. And I always check the camera profile first. Now in this case, looks like we've got several here. Okay, so and what kind of file? So this is a Nikon NEF file. So we can see that when I pull down this menu here, and I had some questions previously or recently on a recent video about what if you don't see those there. It means that your camera is probably not supported by Luminar Neo. Okay, so if you don't see these here. Okay, these ones here, I went and downloaded and added them myself for a couple of things. Okay, so I'm going to try landscape first. So camera landscape profiles usually enhance greens and blues, which we have a lot of here. Right? See what happened? We got lots more contrast. Okay, and I didn't do anything other than the camera profile. Let's try a different one. Let's try neutral. Okay. That's not bad, and it's nice and clean, actually. And if we go portrait, not much happened, okay, because it's usually affecting skin tones. standard. Okay, so these are pretty similar, most of them for the most part, other than this landscape one. Okay, so landscape is adding a bunch of contrast. And notice now if we use the clipping warnings, it's actually sort of darkened the whole image and the bird is now clipping. If we just use the Luminar default, you see the difference? So it's adding a bunch of contrast. And in this case, I don't think I want that. So I'm just actually going to either go with the default or stick with camera neutral. Okay, so camera neutral added a little bit of contrast. I'm happy with that. Okay. If you want to please share the shortcut for the keyboard shortcut cheat sheet. I'm using J on the keyboard to get the clipping warnings to show. Right. So the next thing I want to do, and the histogram is here, but it's also here under curves. Okay. I want to push this part of the graph over so it touches the edge here, right? I'm going to have my clipping warnings on, and I can see that there's a little bit clipping already in his head, but I'm going to tuck in this part of the graph, which is the whites on the curve. So I'm going to bring this in, and you can see that I am clipping. I'm going to bring the highlights back down so I don't clip the whites, okay? Now this one possibly might need a little bit of exposure push. And then I am going to give it a bit more black, which will give us more contrast. Clipping blacks is okay. Clipping whites, not as much. So I'm going to dial this one back a little bit. We can pick up more detail in his head later as well. Okay. That looks pretty good. Okay. Now I'm just going to check the color. Am I happy with this color? So here is the only place that you will get to choose a white balance preset. Okay, so we can try any of the presets based on like the same ones that you would choose in your camera. Okay, so I chose daylight and it does seem a little bit warmer. This one's a little pink. We can also choose cloudy. And I think daylight does a pretty good job. If anything, I'll bring it just a tiny bit warmer and we'll leave it there. Okay. Sharpen, I'm going to bring it up a little bit. Now, this one doesn't have a masking tool, so you kind of have to, there is a masking slider, but it doesn't give you a visual representation of what it's masking, okay? The way that this works is if I sharpen to the max, and I'm going to zoom into 100% here, okay? You can see what's happening is it is indeed sharpening him, but it's actually sharpening the sky and the pixels in the sky, which should be smooth, right? So if you increase this masking slider, it's taking it off areas which are smooth. Okay, can you see how it's removing it from the sky as I increase? But he's still being sharpened, right? See that? He's definitely being sharpened. So I think I do actually want to use this tool and bring it up a little bit higher, but make sure I'm not sharpening the sky. So I want to keep that masking up high. Okay. Now let's just see what this was shot as. So it was ISO 560, so it's not a super high ISO, so we shouldn't get a lot of noise reduction, but I can do a little bit of noise reduction here on the raw file. Keep in mind, the more noise reduction you do, you get back blur again. Okay, so it reduces noise by increasing this blur effect. So instead of doing it here, if there's any noise, I'm going to use that noiseless extension. Okay. Before I close this tool, I'm going to make sure to fix chromatic aberration. I don't see any, but we'll make sure just in case. And any color fringe. Okay. Do I see any? Don't really see any. I'm looking for a slight purple or pink tinge around him, and he looks pretty good. Okay, so once I'm happy with this, I might want to punch up the shadows just a little bit, give them a bit more detail. Okay. Again, it's that dance. So when I bring the shadows up, then I want to bring the exposure back down, and then maybe I want to bring the whites back up again. So I'm always doing this little dance of push the whites, bring the highlights down, bring the shadows up, take the blacks down. Okay. All right, we're going to stop there. So far, we've just done some basic adjustments. now I will use the Enhance AI. You have to be careful with this one when you do the sky enhancer, because this one is the one where you can go overboard and make clown vomit or neon puke or whatever you want to call it. Okay, so that is too much. Okay, too much saturation. Accent AI, notice that brightens the bird, right, and his dark feathers. The sky is darkening the sky. But I think there's a better way to deal with the sky. I can use color tool, right? So I'm going to do a little bit here, but I don't want to go too far. Okay? Use the eyedropper, keep it subtle. Okay? I mentioned the color tool, so we can work on darkening the sky if we want to do that in the color tool. Change it to luminance, which is brightness, and then target the blues. Okay, so we can darken the blue. Now see the difference here? It's darkening the blue, which is what the other tool was doing, but it's not taking the saturation over the top. So that's why I said there's better ways of doing that, right? I think I want to maybe darken the tree, the greens a little bit as well, just to take those highlights off the edge of there. I want the eye to come out to the eagle, right? So there's a lot of texture and contrast here. And do you remember the 4 things that your eye will go to? I'm going to put them on the screen. Okay, so your eye is drawn to brightness, sharpness, color, and contrast. Okay, so the tree has lots of sharpness and contrast. So I'm going to try and minimize some of that using this color tool here. And then we're going to use the structure tool to enhance the eagle and de-emphasize the tree. Okay, so let's see what this is doing. Okay, like so. I'm actually going to see about orange. See if I lighten orange, okay? There's a little bit of orange in the tree, but see how that brings out his feathers a little bit? So I'm going to bring out the orange. And that was just a lucky guess. Looks, he's got some red as well. So see how brightening the orange and the red is actually bringing out his feathers. Okay. And I want to be careful about darkening yellow because you see it's also in his beak, right? And his feathers. So I may not want to darken yellow, but darken the greens instead. I'm going to stick a quick vignette on here. So the idea behind a vignette is usually I'm darkening the edges, again, to bring the eye into the subject. So I'm going to go darken almost all the way, feather almost all the way. And now because we've cropped this, this is something that I'm told is going to be updated so that once we've cropped an image, the vignette tool will start at the current edges or post crop, right? Right now it starts on the original image. So we have to sort of adjust it, and I can only make it so small. But I want to put this around him so that it's darkening more of the tree at the bottom. Okay, can you see that? So if it goes off the edge, that's fine. So I'm using the feather down to 0 to get my vignette positioned, and then putting it back up high and adjusting the amount so that it's not obvious. So you don't want to make vignettes that look like a spotlight, okay? That's too obvious. So I can go real dark if I want, but make sure it's really heavily feathered, okay? So feathering means the degree of fade so you don't see the edge of it. Okay? That looks pretty good. Like so. Okay. Now let's deal with this eagle. Okay, so I'm going to do structure AI. So structure helps you find or increase contrast in the image and localize contrast. It would be similar to using something like clarity if you're using Lightroom. Okay, so see what it does, and it definitely is bringing out the tree more, but we don't want it on the tree. I just want it on the bird and his face. Okay, so I'm going to put it at maximum, and I do this just for effect so that I can see where it's going. Okay, I'm going to zoom in so I can see the bird, and I'm just going to mask it, but I'm going to use a trick first. So I'm going to use Mask AI, and I'm hoping that it's going to find the sky really well because I'm going to select the sky and then invert it. And let's just see how well it does. Okay, so sky. and it says flora, so let's hope it picks the tree, right? Not too bad. Okay, so I anticipated that it would pick the tree and the sky pretty well. Okay, I don't know what it thinks is mountains, but we're gonna turn that off probably. Yeah, it thinks the bird is a mountain, which is interesting. Right. So notice that by selecting mountains, I showed this a couple weeks ago, and Holly had an aha moment where if you select it and it is the area you want, but you want the opposite, just unselect it. And now you can see that the eagle is actually pretty nice and clean. So I've got the selection that I want. It's just opposite, right? So I just need to go down here. I'm just going to show the mask and invert it. Okay, so now I've got the eagle mostly selected. Now there's a few other bits over here that I could erase, right? Because I don't want this part over here. So I'll just go in with an erase and do a really quick erase over there, like so. Okay, so now it should only be affecting this part of the bird. And I could zoom in and get a closer on his feathers here, but for this purposes, it looks pretty good. Okay, so now you can see that it's only affecting him. Okay. So I increase these amounts to ridiculous levels, and then I bring them back down after I get the masking where I want it. Okay, so let's see how that's doing on our bird. So off. Oh, let it catch up to me. Okay, so off, on. Look at his feathers. Okay. Perfect. Now, before I leave here, I'm going to copy this mask, and then I'm going to use the same mask in the details panel because I want to sharpen him. Now, he already looks like he's a lot sharper than we first looked at him, right? If I do before, see how he's kind of just hazy looking, and after, right? So now I can increase, oh, let me get back to 50%. If I increase the small details, this is the one that is going to give you the trick or the look of it being sharp when it may not be totally sharp. Okay, so I'm taking small details up high, and then of course I'm just going to apply that mask by pasting it. So now again, it's just on him. And this time I might want it just on his head. So I might go a little further and remove a little bit more. So I don't want to sharpen this part so much, just his face, right? And then of course I want to dial the amount down because I've taken it too far again. So usually small details up to around 30 or so does a nice job. If we zoom in to 100%, let's see what that's doing. So look at his eye and his beak in particular when I turn this off. See how it's just a little hazy? And then it sharpens it up. Okay. It's adding a little bit of noise, but for me, it's not so bad. Okay. I don't mind it so much because it's giving me the sharpness that wasn't there. So I'm going to say that's a trade I'm willing to make, because look at how much sharper. Okay, look at his beak. Look at how much sharper off, on. Okay, so this details panel is a great one for increasing sharpness like this. Okay, now I'm going to close this panel and I'm going to apply both of them again, but we're going to actually go the other way this time. Okay, so I'm going to go minus, which makes everything look kind of blurry. I'm going to do the AI masking again, and this time I want to target that tree. Okay, so I want to get some less details in the tree, and it did a pretty good job, but I am going to make sure that it's not getting the bird here. So I'm going to erase from him. Okay, so see that? I'm just erasing off his feathers like so. So I'm mostly getting this tree. So once again, I'm going to copy this mask, come back here and adjust this because it's too far. And what I'm looking for is I'm just trying to take off the edge of the amount of detail on this tree. Okay. Let's see a before, after. Before, after. You can see the difference? It's just taking off the edge of all of these sharp bits. Okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing on details, and we're going to go minus. Okay. So let's just see what that does. Okay. So small details. I think it's going to be medium details. Yeah. See that? See how it makes the tree just kind of look a little bit glowier? And then I'm going to mask, paste. Okay. So now let's do the before and after. Okay. Before and after. So he really stands out because we've increased the sharpness of him and decreased the sharpness of the tree. We've increased his contrast and decreased the contrast on the tree, okay, as well as darkened the sky. If I want to take it a step farther and do a little bit more on the tree, what I would do is either use the dodging and burning tool, which is now available underneath the bottom here under the Pro Tools. But honestly, I still prefer doing it this way with the develop tool and just lowering the exposure, lowering the highlights, and then I'm just going to paint in on the tree. Okay, so I'm going to paint in at about 50%. So remember, the first time you click paint, it's going to disappear everywhere except that spot. Okay, so now I'm painting that effect into the tree. So I'm just darkening highlights, and it's just sort of trying to get rid of that massive amount of contrast in that tree. You see what that's doing? I overpainted a little bit on the sky, but I can fix that. Let's just see if I do a crappy job of painting over the tree. I could use that same mask again. But if I go back here to Mask AI, remember, if I select sky, it's going to select the sky and then unselect it, which should then remove it. So it's not bad. I did get a little bit over on the sky. Let's see how bad it looks. That's not too bad. I'm going to just not darken quite as much and just focus on lowering the contrast. Okay, so we can lower contrast. I can push the shadows up. So it's the highlights that are so bright and the shadows that are so dark that makes the tree stand out as much as it does. Okay. You see what that's doing? Like that. And then I might actually go ahead and do another vignette. Or here's a simple way to do a vignette. If you want to use a linear gradient, is just darken, right? And then use a mask, linear gradient, drag it up from the bottom. If I want to just darken the bottom of that tree, okay? Now you can see where I'm darkening. It's going from the bottom up, okay? And then just not quite so much. And again, if I want to remove it from the sky, I can do the same thing again. Mask AI, add the sky, and remove the sky. Okay, so now it's only on the bottom part of the image where the tree is. Okay, so I'm darkening the bottom of the tree. Cool tricks? Okay. All right, let's see. How am I doing? Have I missed any question? Oh, Holly says she likes the image zoomed in like that. Okay, well, maybe we need to crop a bit more. You want to keep in mind that there's a point where if you crop too much, you're left with something that's going to become really pixelated, especially if you want to try and print it. We're working on that, Holly, on some merchandise. No, we'll have a little thing that says neon puke with a line through it or something like that. Yeah. Let's see. Yes, the cropping issue would be great. Crop in hard, just the bird and the tree. Okay, well, let's try harder crop then. That seems to be a consensus. So let's just come in. I'm going to change it back to the original aspect ratio then. Let's just go back here and keep the original aspect ratio. So something like that, where it's really tight on him. How about that? That's pretty good. Actually, I like that. Yep. So depending on the lens that you have, Deb, let's see what focal length was used here. 500 mil at 500. Okay, so you really couldn't get any closer. Okay, you really couldn't get any closer to him, but cropping like this is an option. Okay, Rob says do it in the other orientation. All right, well, let's try that then. Oops, layer properties. All right, let's try that. So we're gonna crop it. He wants it to go this way, right? So let's just see what happens if we do that. The tree looks taller, but then there's too much tree. So this is something that I'm actually going to do an article on, which is visual mask, because right now the tree takes up half of the image, okay? And the bird is small. So when we do it the other way, like I had it, like the tree is minimized, okay? So there's less tree than there is bird. I think that's a stronger composition, right? So at least now the bird is the same size or like takes up the same or similar amount of space, okay? Than the tree, which is overtaking it. And if the sky takes up a lot of space, that's fine, right? Because the sky is sort of blank. It's like the background. It's like the canvas, right? So don't worry about that. Yeah. Everybody's liking this crop. Okay, so the eagle is on the thirds vertical line. So if I open that crop tool again, right, you see those thirds. So yes, I put him there on purpose. Exactly. Good pickup to know. Okay. Marty likes the crop. Okay. Trish likes the crop. Excellent. Okay. So I think we can call this one done. Let's move on to another one. Let's see. This one is Brandon's. And do I have another one of Brandon's? It's Brandon here. Marty's here. So let's do one of Marty's birds. All right. So I think these are JPEGs, Marty, and I can't remember what happened. Oh, there is one that's a raw file. So this one is a JPEG, but the other one is a raw file. And I remember looking at this one because the bird wasn't super sharp. Like you can see that he's not real sharp. I'm going to hang on to this one if you don't mind, Marty, because there is Sharpen AI coming to Neo. That's one of the extensions that's been announced. So let's just hang on and, or has it been announced? Maybe that one hasn't been announced. Let's just see. Let's check. Maybe I'm making things up here. If we go to the extensions, where am I at here? Oh, here we go. There should be a way to show us extensions. Oh. Am I missing it? Oh, the plugin, the puzzle piece, right? The puzzle piece. Okay. Super sharp. There we go. So that one must have just been announced then. So I wasn't making it up. It was just announced. So we know that upscale is coming and the background is coming, and they've announced now focus stacking and super sharp. So let's hang on to this one, Marty, because those are the 6 that are coming, and then there's still more. So I'm still crossing my fingers for a panel merging, but both of these are going to be good. So I'd love to, I actually am going to put Neo's noise reduction head-to-head with topazes, as well as sharpen head-to-head with topaz as well, once they're all in there. So let's hang on to this one, Marty. So let's do this birdie instead. And then Brandon is here, so we will do Brandon's as well. All right, so let's take a look at this guy. Okay, so he seems a little blurry as well. Birds are really tough subjects. And you can tell, how you can tell, is it out of focus or is it motion? Look for other things in your image. Do you see something else that's sharp? Like this looks sharper than that, right? So it looks like focus is up here, right? These look sharp-ish. So especially when you have something that goes in and out towards the camera, like these little sticks, look at where is it the sharpest point. It looks the sharpest there, which seems to be behind the bird. Okay, so the sharpest point is just slightly behind him, but let's see if we can make him look a little bit sharper. Okay, so let's do the same process. Again, I'm going to do develop raw first, and there's a little bit of noise on this one. Let's see what ISO 4000. So as expected, that will give us a little bit of noise, right? Yes, I have your duckies, Holly. So we should be able to get to this one, Brandon's and duckies. So that should be good. Let's try the landscape. Look at that, right? Look at how much different that made just shifting to landscape, and the greens pop. So does the bird. So that's a good change. Histogram is good. That's clipping, but I'm not going to worry about it because I'm probably going to crop some of that top part off because he's nicely sort of framed in this little opening here. So I'm not worried about that. If anything, I want to add a little bit more black, which will increase the color even more. See that? Okay, I'm going to turn the clipping warnings off. Can you see the difference it makes with the color saturation when you add black? Okay, let's just check the clipping. That looks pretty good. And color. Okay, so I think this one could benefit from being a bit warmer. So I'm going to try daylight white balance. Okay, that's better as well. And I think I'm pretty happy with that. We're going to do a little bit of sharpen here. Okay, keep that mask higher again. And we'll do a little bit of noise reduction here. But again, I don't want to do a lot because it's going to do too much blurring. Okay, so if I turn this on and off, right, let's bring the shadows up so we can see his face a little better. Don't know how much detail we're going to get out of him. And I feel like it's a little bit green. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of pink, no magenta. Maybe a touch more. We can play with those colors a bit more. As usual, I'm going to do the defringing. And we'll call it a day on this one. All right. Now let's see if we can sharpen him up after we do a crop. Let's see what Luminar thinks is a good cropping. Okay, so the composition AI button is basically going to suggest a crop to you. And I find that it actually, the amount that it comes in is usually pretty good, but it doesn't always position it where I would. Because I wouldn't leave this white bit up here. In fact, I would do exactly the opposite. Okay. I like this part on the right here because there's a nice solid frame around the bird. But I want to have him a little bit more in that lower thirds. So if anything, I'm going to just come in a tiny bit tighter. Okay, so now we have a nice solid frame around him. See that? One thing, we didn't do the dust spots on the other image, but that's easy enough to do, Deb. Just use the erase tool and do that. Now let's see if we can sharpen him up. Let's do a vignette around him so we see him better. The steps that I usually use, people always ask me, well, what order do you apply the tools in? Okay, so develop raw generally first, cropping either right after that or right before that. You notice that was my second step. And then I usually go and add the vignette because when you start to darken the edges and get really focused in on what your subject is, it's actually easier to do your editing when you know what's being taken care of by the vignette. Okay, so I'm going to do a nice vignette here to darken down these edges. Now look at how much that brings him in, right? Look at the difference. Okay, so it's really bringing attention to that bird. Okay. And because, here's the other trick, because we can't make this any smaller because it was cropped and we can't make the vignette any smaller, there's actually a trick, right? And I showed that we could do a double vignette. So I would put one over here, one over here. But I'm not going to worry about that. I kind of like the backlight behind him, right? Because it makes the contrast. Remember those four things again: contrast, sharpness, color, and brightness. So your eye is drawn to this bright area, but because the bird is in it, he's kind of highlighted. So I don't mind that so much. Okay. Right, so now we've got him cropped, edge vignette, color corrected. Let's deal with some sharpness. Right, so I'm going to do details first. And let's come in so we can see the little bird. And I don't know how much detail there even is to pick up there. See, the black part and his body is fairly sort of almost smooth. And that's partly because of the high ISO. The higher the ISO is, the less detail you get, right? So as you increase the ISO, not only do you, let more light in, but you increase the amount of noise, which we can see on the screen. You increase noise. If I zoom in even more, you can see the noise. You increase noise, you decrease the amount of detail, you decrease the contrast, and you decrease the saturation. So that's why people recommend using a lower ISO whenever possible, right? But it definitely makes his eye look sharper, right? And his feet. So I think I want to go for, adding some sharpening here, keeping this masking up higher. So he definitely looks sharper, right? But I don't want it to apply anywhere except the bird. So in this case, I don't know if it's going to select bird or object. I'm just going to use the brush and paint it in. Okay, so I'm going to get a smaller brush and I'll paint at 100% because I want it all across here on him. And then when I get to the edges, I'll use a smaller brush. So notice I'm not getting the edges. I'll just make my brush smaller and usually lower the softness and the strength so that I can get closer to the edge. Okay. I want to get his head, I want to get his other foot. And you see what's happening. See how it's creating a noise effect here. So it looks like the bird is noisier, right? Definitely see the noise, right? I don't want to overlap this at all here. You can kind of see that his wing is so out of focus that it's moving also, right? There's a little bit of blur to the wing. So I want to be careful not to sharpen the part that would be blurry. Okay, so see how we've given him a bit more sharpness, okay? But now he's got some noise issues, more noise than we had before. So I'm going to copy this mask and I'm going to use Noiseless AI and mask it to him. So it's recommending middle, but I'm going to go with high. Now it's going to take a minute here, and that's one of the things that the update that I didn't install says that it will do is run this faster, okay? Oh, awesome, Danelle. Yeah, I'm going to keep things in categories from now on. So whatever people send in, we're going to try and keep themes to each sort of show so that we have birds or water or landscapes or city or street, that kind of thing. Brandon wants to know what kind of bird that is, Marty. Okay. I don't know what you're saying, Rob. If you could put it, oh yes, fall photos. Thank you, Rob. He put it in the chat. Oh, Holly's got an interesting idea. Maybe put a texture over it. Haha. Good idea. We could definitely try that. Okay, so it's done the noise reduction and it's done it everywhere. Okay. But I want this one to apply just to the bird. So I'm going to paste in. So it's just applying on the bird. Okay. So I should. There we go. Okay. So let's see what it's doing. So there's definitely, that's before and after. Okay. So it's done a good job of removing that noise for the most part without actually removing the detail, right? Keep in mind that the more you increase this detail slider, you get the detail back, but you also get the noise back. Okay, so you have to find this happy medium again, right? So it's there. Now I could run it again, okay? Because remember this noiseless raw on the original, before I done any edits, it's going to apply on the raw. So I'm going back and doing it before. Okay, so anything that's at the bottom of your edit panel is applying first before all the other stuff. Okay, so the noiseless and the develop apply to the raw file. Okay, a Baltimore Oriole. Huh. Cool. I don't know that I've ever seen one either. I thought they were red. Are they not? I'm trying to think of their uniforms like the baseball guys. No, there is no right or wrong, Holly. It's a perfect idea. So we might give that a go. Okay, so it's done a lot of noise reduction, but it's also making the bird blurry, right? So it's doing a great job everywhere else. But you'll notice that on the raw version, there is no masking. Okay, so that's why I applied it as non-raw, noiseless to the bird. Okay, I'm going to dial this down just a little bit because I find like it's actually removing too much and he's getting a little bit blurry. All right, so let's go back and apply them all. It's going to take a minute for it to catch up. Okay, catch up. We can also play with the color tool, right? And see if we can darken down that background a little bit. I bet you we can. Baltimore Oriole is yellow or orange. I was trying to capture in flight, but the light wasn't strong enough, so I had a high ISO. Yeah, that's the trade-off, right? I'm looking at your, so 5, 6. The challenge is the lens too, because your maximum aperture wide open is f5.6, right? If you had a 2.8 lens, which I know is super expensive for long lenses like that, then you could have had 2 stops less ISO, or in other words, like 1,000 ISO versus 4,000. So it's always a trade-off, right? What just happened? That was weird. It was like I had cropped it, but not cropped it. Okay, so let's do a full before and after. You can definitely see some detail picking up in his feathers there for sure. Okay, so let's try the color tool, and I'm going to try and darken yellow, but I'm afraid it's going to, see, it's going to get everything else, but it's darkening him a bit too. Let's try green. So green is good. We can darken that edge a bit more. Yeah, it's like that background. See, that's him. He's picking up red, so we can brighten him. We can brighten orange, brighten red. And I don't know about this part in the middle here. It's not picking up any of those, but I'm going to darken the greens a little bit more. Let's see what it's doing. Okay, so it's bringing him out even more. Okay. Let's see. A couple of minor things I would do here besides this. There's a couple of things that sort of bother me. So I look for little spots and things, and I would use the erase tool for this, right? Because it does content aware fill. So I'm just going to do an erase on the end of there to get rid of sort of the white ends of these sticks. The other one I'm going to do is this one here, and then there's just a little dot there, right? A little dot there. So it's minor, right? See how that worked? These are minor things, but this is the kinds of stuff that will, take your image to the next level if you pay attention to these kinds of details, right? So erase tool tries to blend it in, and it does a nice job. See that? The end of this thing bugs me too. So I don't know what it's going to do, but I'm going to see if I can get rid of it. Even just try and get it to blend nicer. Okay, it's making a mess. So to fix it, just paint over it and do restore. And let's zoom in and see if I can do a better job zoomed in. If it makes a mess, try it again, zooming in a bit more, because I find that your painting is not accurate. There, look at that. Already better. Okay, so let me just see about trying to blend it. I'm trying to get the end of this stick to sort of like fade out a little bit. Okay, so same. Again, not working. Let's just restore it and just do the end again. Oh, here's one where I could well, that's not bad. Here's one where I could actually try the new cloning tool. And I'm going to get this spot here too. So all of these little sort of white spots, I'm just using the erase tool to blend them out. Okay. Like so. Now let's try the clone tool. Okay, so the clone tool, you have to set the source first, and it tells you that. Okay, so I'm going to click here, and I'm going to paint with 50% or so. And I'm just going to go over the branch. So it should just lighten out the end of the branch if it does it correctly. Or not. Did it do it? Do one more pass. Not sure it's doing anything. I haven't. Oh, there we go. Yeah, now I've got a duplicate of it, but you got the idea. Okay, so if you want a new cloning source, just press the Alt Option key. Okay. So that looks a little better. So I just wanted it to sort of fade out because that stick was bugging me. That looks a little better. See, that stick by itself was just bugging me. This one kind of bugs me too. So I might use the eraser and even this here. Okay, so again, minor things. And if you need to look at your image upside down, then go look at it upside down. Okay. If you want to get really carried away, you could try and remove these strings here that are coming out from behind the bird. But let's try what Holly suggested and see about adding a texture. You could also, instead of adding a texture on this one, simply adding film grain might do the trick. So let's do some film grain. I'm going to zoom in to 50% so we can see the bird. So everything I've done to just remove the noise, we're now sort of going against the grain and adding grain, literally. Okay, so you can see the film grain. And remember, I think I still have that copied, right? So we can add some film grain and literally just go with it. So we're kind of putting the noise back that we took out, right? And if I want to paste that mask in, it's going to paste it on the bird and then just invert it. So I don't have the film grain on him. So remember, wherever that's red is where the adjustment applies. So we're not adding any film grain to him, just to the background. Okay. So there's the before and after. Okay. And there's one more tool that might work to pick up this spot in the background, and that's super contrast. Right? Let's try the highlight slider. See how that's darkening that middle section, right? See that? So I do the amount first, and then when you go to the right, it darkens. Okay? That's actually doing a nice job, and it gives it a bit more color. See that? So you could also do a texture, but I think in this case, the film grain works fairly well. All right, let's see. Would an orange bokeh be overkill? Well, maybe. Maybe it's overkill, maybe not. Let's just see. Let's see what I got for yellow or orange. If I only want to add maybe a few in the background, I'm going to go with this one. And see how that's actually looks nice over here. Let's see. Yeah, I don't mind that, actually. Let's just change it to one of these blend modes. Probably. Ooh, that's kind of interesting. Look at that. So it darkens, but it really brings the effect, brings him out more. See that? Let's try screen or lighten. So I'm really looking at this area up here because I don't want it on him, right? Let's just see. That's too much. Playing around with this positioning of it. All right, let's try this one. And then I'm just going to lower it. And I'm just going to paint it in where we want it. And I did like that soft light. That was kind of cool, actually. Why don't we go with something like that? I could mask it off him as well. And I'm just going to use a brush. And I'm going to erase with maybe 30%. It's darkening some areas a little bit too much. So let's just keep them a little bit lighter. See how I'm just do one brush stroke, see how it looks. Make my brush smaller, see how it looks. There we go. I like it. Good idea. All right, Marty, you got some work to do? Let's see. Danelle says, can you soften the edges of the bokeh? Yes, because it's on a layer by itself. So I could actually use Mystical or Glow. I have Glow up here in my favorites. So I could add a Glow. We could add Soft Focus. So that does soften the edges. Like that. Right? Or we could try Orton Effect. A little more softness. Okay, Orton tends to brighten, so I have to make sure we still have the bokeh showing so we don't lose it. But yes, you can soften the edge of the bokeh because it's its own layer. Okay, so you just have to go and use the tools because that's applying only on here. Right, so if we hide this layer, right, I haven't softened that. I've only softened the bokeh. Okay. You can also change the color of it. You can increase the contrast of it, right? If I want it to have more contrast, right, the bokeh might show a little bit more, right? See how if I can increase the contrast like this, like so. See, now it shows more. So you can do all kinds of things to this additional layer, right? Now I might mask it a little bit more. Take those off. All right. So that one's fun. Now which ones are your ducks? Oh, yes, we have Holly's ducks. Okay, these are Holly's ducks. Let's do this one, and then we'll do Brandon's. Okay, any questions about that last one? Looks like what you accomplished. I knew I had problems, but I was curious what you would do with it. So yeah, sometimes, I mean, the image itself, like sharpness in the world of photography can be overrated and people get stuck on this image isn't perfectly sharp, so I'm just going to throw it in the trash. But yeah, what if you can make art from it instead? You know, like I think that's perfectly acceptable image, right? And if Holly says, you know, it's difficult because those birds don't like to sit still for photos, then you know, do the best you can, because the other image that you have of this guy is good as well, but same thing, right? He's a little bit blurry. But the issue, I think, is not that he's moving, because if I look at your shutter speed, you're at 1,000th of a second. You know, you might want a little bit more, and the low light condition makes that problematic. But the issue is that the focus is just not on the plane. It's not on the bird. So my question, Marty, is what focus modes are you using in your camera? Rob, if you could please share that article on increasing sharpness, six ways, you know, the one, increasing your sharpness of your photos. Setting your focus mode when you're doing birds, right? You might want to set it to continuous focus, number one. So it's tracking the bird, right? And in this case, let's see, Canon. Okay, so that would be servo. I'm just checking what camera you have, so I know what it's called. Okay, so the servo focus mode, right? So it's tracking the bird. Then you want to shoot in continuous drive mode or high-speed shooting mode. So you take multiple images when you press the button, right? So it goes click, 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 click. And then in this case, I know, like on my camera, I can do single point, but expand it so it's a bigger point. You might not want to use zone, but you might want to have a slightly larger area than a pinpoint, because if you don't get it on the bird when he's moving around, if you're using single point, it's hard to get it on him, right? Now, depending on what camera did you use here, let's see. What is the camera that you 7D? Okay, 7D is a great camera for moving subjects, Marty. So check some of the focus modes, because I know with Canon you can actually set it to, there's like 8 different focus modes depending on how the subject is reacting, including one that subject moves erratically in different directions. Okay, that's a bird, right? So check your focus settings, you check your manual. If you're not familiar with those settings, go to YouTube and I'll even search it for you if we have a minute. Go to YouTube and find a video for your camera on just how to use that camera. Okay. It's just the sharper images. Search for sharper images, Rob. I probably already have it here. And when you go on YouTube, there's one channel that's really great. It's Tony and Chelsea Northrup. They've got some really great things outlining different cameras. Right? I got the article here, Rob. So find your camera on YouTube and just go and watch every single menu item, dial, button, you name it. You may watch something. Danelle says another Canon expert is Rudy Winston. Okay, so there's another one. Okay, so look for specific settings on your camera. All right, back to the ducks. Is that a duck or is that a goose? It looks like a goose. Okay, so with this one, also Canon, and we're at f6.3, also at the maximum end of the lens, but not so much to crop here. My biggest concern is that like the depth of field, right? Mom is in sharp focus and she's moving a little bit. Do you see what I mean by if you want to know where your focus is, look for the plane of focus, right? I am going to just do sharpness to the max here. So just for a moment so you can see it. Do you see where the ground comes into focus? See, it's out of focus, comes into focus, and then goes out of focus again. So that's what I'm looking for, right? So look at this little guy, right? He's right in the area where it's sharp. This guy's a little behind, right? Then it falls out. And where's Mom? She's actually a little behind, or her feet are, right? But her body and her head is in that focus zone, okay? So focus for me would be, I would say this is perfect. These guys falling a little bit out of focus is fine. All right, so we're going to add a little bit of sharpness on here and do our normal. So let's try camera landscape. Oh, that's interesting, right? So remember how I said camera landscape increases blues and greens? Well, look what it did, okay? So the concrete, it actually picked up a lot of blue and it really brought out the ducks. So camera landscape looks pretty good. Faithful still looks sort of brown. I think we're going to be doing landscape here. I'm just trying them all. Yeah, landscape is landscape for the win. Okay, I want to see the curve. Now this is where I'm going to use the clipping warning. So I press the J key and I don't see anything but this matte back here clipping, but I'm looking for white because I want to see more white. So I'm going to drag this in until I start to see clipping, and I'm looking at Mom's back, right? So when I zoom in a little bit, can you see that tiny little bit of start clipping on her back right there? Okay, so see the red bits? I'm just dragging until I see a bit clipping like that. Then I can bring the highlights back down again. But generally, I want the white sort of touching the edge. So if you drag it up till you get clipping and then just back down again, that's what you're looking for. Okay. Now I want to add a little bit of blacks for the same reason. Okay, so see how the black slider only goes so far, but if you go with the black on the curves, you can go much farther. Okay. Not that I want to, but just so you're aware. And now look at the big difference, just those few changes, changing the profile. We added some sharpness. Now let's deal with the color because it looks a little blue. Now this is one where we could use the eyedropper, right? If we know that this concrete is neutral, we could choose it and it will color correct. Went a little green. Let's try back here. Okay, that's not bad. I'm going to just try daylight and see what we get. Still a little green. Okay. Cloudy definitely brings out more yellow. So I'm going to go somewhere between daylight and cloudy and then give it a little more magenta to get rid of that green tint. This one might actually be a good one to use that remove color cast slider in the color tool. Okay, so we can try that. Or if we know that Mom's feathers should be white, we can try that. Okay, but I think she's a bit warmer than white. That looks pretty good. I think she's more brown, right? So that looks better. Now that we've got that, oh, let's do the optics right there. And then we'll do a crop. Okay, so before I crop, notice this little white strip up here, right? Up here above this doormat that's behind them. Definitely want to get rid of that, right? There's a lot of space down in front here. I don't want to cut off any of the babies, okay? So let's just see what Luminar thinks. So definitely I want to come in there. It's actually not bad. I might go off the original and go freeform and just give her a little more space over here. And I just want to get rid of that white spot at the top. It's almost sort of a more panoramic shot with less foreground, like so. Now, we've talked about leading lines, or you may hear about leading lines. Well, guess what? You kind of have one here. So your eye comes in to the image on the left, and you follow this line of ducks. Now, they didn't complete it for you. You know, he could have moved over a little bit. What was he thinking? So the line of ducks, but your eye makes the jump, right? Because you know that they're all the same, and you lead right to mom, and she's sharp, okay? So you do have a leading line here. Let's add a vignette. Again, that same cropping issue. Now I'm going to go a little rounder because I want to make sure to keep mom's head. And if the guys in the front get a little bit darker, that's okay. Something like that. There we go. So these guys getting dark is okay because they're a little bit out of focus, right? So our eye goes in and comes to them. Again, cleaning up the image, right? There's bird poop on the ground. And this thing back here, I would use the erase tool to clean up this thing here. Because it's kind of like a leaf, I guess, in the background, but it draws the eye. So anytime there's a bright spot in a dark area like this, I would either crop it out, erase it, or clone it out, right? Just get rid of it. Okay? If you could darken it by another means, that's fine too. So I would do some work using the erase tool to clean up some of the poop, maybe. Even this little thing here. Mostly the white spots, right? So I would just clean these up a little bit. That works pretty good. It's the white bits that are taking the attention. Always the white spots draw your attention, right? We know it's bird poop, but we don't have to leave it there. See the difference? It's just these tiny little things that clean it up, right? If I want, I can remove these guys as well. Even this one. Right, so it's just cleaning up the image. I would zoom in and do a better job than I'm doing now, but you get the idea, okay? So your eye is going to the birds instead of the ground. Okay, see the difference? They're warmer. I still think they're a little green. So let's try that color tool and the remove color cast. See what a good job that's doing? It actually is doing a really nice job. Let's give them some more color so we can brighten them. Brighten their little feet. And let's give them a little bit more saturation. Give mom some more red. And if I dial down the blue saturation, see how there's blue in the shadows underneath here? So if I take the blue saturation down, it sort of neutralizes as well. Okay. And if I'm worried about green in the picture, we can just dial the green saturation down a bit as well. Okay. So let's see what that's doing. It's doing a nice job to neutralize and make them pop, There's not a lot more I would do to this one, to be honest. I might use the develop tool to do some custom dodging and burning. And I showed how to do this in a video that if you could share the dodge and burn hack that I had for Luminar Neo prior to the dodge and burn tool coming out, because I still prefer using the develop tool over the dodge and burn tool, right? Because I can do more with it, right? So I can do exposure, highlights, I can lower the contrast, that kind of stuff. And all I'm going to do is brush it in at a really low strength, like 10, right? And get a big brush, and I'm just going to paint in some darkness to make a custom vignette and darken the areas around them like this. So I'm just custom painting darkness. Even this little guy can be darker, like so. We should have time for one more image today. We'll do Brandon's and this wall up here in the corner. Okay, so I prefer to do this kind of, see how it's burning. Okay, so this is called burning. Now, if I'm happy with where I've painted, I can just go back to the adjustments and just dial them darker without having to paint again. See that? There we go. And the brush was nice and soft, and I painted with a really low opacity so that it came in slowly. Okay, let me see about the questions. So going back to Marty's bird, I was using a large focus area, high speed, and having to pan. Focus couldn't keep up with it. Yeah, I would use a smaller focus area in that case, because when you're using the larger focus area and they're in the trees like that, the camera could pick up the tree. And I think that's what happened, right? Yeah, I don't know. I'm still torn on all those geese or ducks. It looks like a goose to me. I've never seen a white duck like that with red on his head. I'd love to know what kind of duck. Yeah, if you go back and shoot these ducks again. So photograph them. Don't shoot them. See? Don't say we shoot ducks. I photograph ducks. Danelle has a great suggestion for you as well, Marty. Back button focus. Okay. That really helps when you're doing back button focus, helps when you're shooting moving objects. So absolutely. And I think I talk about that in the article that is linked above. Okay. Use this setting. It separates focus and shutter release. It's meant for moving objects. Yes. It takes about a month to become muscle memory. I do find that, and if you've put it on back button and you forget that you're using your thumb to focus and not your index finger, yeah, you'll end up with some that are out of focus for a while. It does take practice for sure. Yeah, but it is a good thing to have. My friend who is used to be a journalist and did sports photography, she's the one that showed me that years ago. Just noticing all the poop. Hopefully you noticed it when you were walking there and you didn't step in it. Why is the erase leaving a white correction? Which part, Danelle? It uses content aware fill. So when I use the erase tool, it tries to blend it in with what's around the area. So sometimes it gets it right and sometimes it gets it wrong. And that's why sometimes I just have to paint again and do it again. Rob says he hasn't putting carrots into the roast. So we're having pot roast, I guess, tonight for dinner. So Rob's on top of that in the slow cooker. So I wouldn't do a whole lot more to the geese. I mean, you could actually, if you wanted to add a texture here, that might be kind of interesting because the concrete itself is kind of boring. But let's see if we add something or a light leak. There's light leaks actually built in to Luminar. Let's see what we do if we add one of those actually. So these flares and light leaks, right? Let's see. Let's just see what happens if I add one. Okay, so adds a little bit of light or interest. Not so sure about that one. Play around with some of these though. Let's see what we can come up with. I'll just add a texture. There's the pink one. Let's see this pink one. Oh, this one might be good. Okay, so let's add this blue one. And now with these new buttons, we can actually do fill, so it'll stretch. Okay, so it'll stretch the texture to fit, or just enlarge it so it doesn't stretch or distort it. Okay, so I'm going to just use stretch because I don't care if it's distorted. It's just a texture. Actually, I don't mind that because if it's darkening in that corner, right? So now we can try some of these blend modes. Okay, so overlay actually looks kind of nice. See how it's just adding this little bit of grunge down the bottom here? So that's kind of interesting. Oh, soft light's even better. So soft light is pretty good. Let's try hard light. Hard light is too much, but we could just apply it gently. I think overlay was the best. I'm going to dial it up fairly strong and then just take it off the birds. So I'm just going to mask it off of our duck friends, right? So they don't have the texture over top of them. Okay, so see what that's doing? If I don't want the blue that's in the texture, just like I did on the bokeh, right, I could actually just convert this to black and white. Okay, so now we just have a texture. I'm just going to grab a cough drop here. So now we just have a texture with no color. Okay, I don't mind the color, to be honest. I might actually just shift it a little bit warmer. So if I add a mood that I know is warm, which is this one. See how that makes it warmer? Still got a lot of blue. We could play with the color and get rid of some of the blue. We could shift the blue on the hue. It looks like it's more cyan. No. It is not wanting to shift their color. There we go. That's kind of interesting. Trying to figure out what color's in there. It's like nothing. It's not picking up any of the colors. Let's try luminance. It is blue. Yeah, so I could darken if I want more contrast, right? And then we'll just take the saturation of the blue down. There we go. Or overall. Okay. That looks pretty good. I could also use toning to just give it like a brown tone. More of a yellow tone. See that? To keep it in line with the warmth of the image. That looks pretty good. I'm just going to stretch that. There we go. There we go. So in this case, a texture worked really well. I'd probably mask it a little bit more off this guy over here too. He's got a little too much texture in this corner. Like so. All right. Texture covers the poop nicely. It does. And adds interest to the boring concrete. Exactly. Okay. So textures don't have to just be for, a wild effect, right? As we've seen on this one where we applied a subtle bokeh, right? And on this one where we applied a subtle texture, they're just kind of covering a few things up, right? But adding to what's already there. Okay. All right, let's do this one, which is Brandon's. This will be our last one for today. Is Kevin here? Rob, have you seen Kevin today? Because I know he was going to try and make it. He sent some images. I haven't seen Kevin. But I'm going to save your images, Kevin, because I want to get in touch. He sent me this one here. And if you're watching this replay later, Kevin, I want the original camera files because this one and the other one you sent are both cropped and they look like they've been somewhat edited or sharpened already. So if you have the camera original, that's the ones that I would prefer. And I'll hang on to that one until we're doing a people theme. And the other one I put into a water theme because he's a fisherman. Okay, so I'm going to hang on to those. All right, so I think this one, yes, is Brandon's. Okay. So we've got another, looks like a bird of prey of some kind here. And let's just see. He looks pretty sharp. Again, do you see that sort of glow around it? It's sort of like he's mostly in focus, but this thing looks super sharp. And he's maybe just a tiny bit behind it. So we'll try and do the sharpening trick again, right? So we've got some dust spots in here as well. So we're going to start with, I'm going to crop first on this one. So I know I'm going to crop in fairly liberally because we don't need so much sky. And I'm going to come even more. So see, I don't even need the spot removal tool because I want to get rid of a good chunk of the sky. And I want to still see his nest. Like so. Okay, so we're getting rid of a bunch of sky. And this one was shot with, let's see, Sony 200 to 600. Looks like he's got an extender as well. So big lens, right, Brandon? So all the way out. Now, is there any spots here? We'll come back to deal with the spots. Let's do develop. So all of these you'll notice are the same process, right? I'm not familiar with the Sony names, but let's try the different ones here. I'm looking for one that might be landscape. I'm guessing that's neutral. Not sure what in means or IN. Camera standard. Oh, that one looks pretty good. See that deep in the sky? That looks like a good option. So I'm going to go with that one, right? And the histogram, I'm going to turn on the clipping warnings. Again, I want to increase the brightness. See a little bit of him as clipping. I'm not too worried about that. And make sure we have a little bit of blacks clipping. Bring the highlights back down and the shadows up. See, it's a pretty high contrast scene to begin with, right? But I'm adding contrast to make sure that it spreads out across the whole histogram. Again, a little bit of sharpness here. Keep the masking high. And any defringing. Let's just see if we have any chromatic aberration. Don't see any. So we're good there. Okay. Don't see any edge vignetting. That looks good. Let's do erase. I'll just see if there's any dust spots. Now, funny thing is that I'm looking sideways at my screen like this because I need to clean my computer screen because I've got dust spots on my computer screen and I can't tell if they're on the picture or on my screen. So I'm just going to run the dust spot removal because I got fingerprints that I need to clean off my screen. Okay, so let's see. Will the Yellowstone waterfall qualify as water? Yes, absolutely. Yes, I will hang on to that one, Danelle, if you sent that. Kevin says, the mom and daughter has been sliced and diced. That's as close to the original as you have. Okay, I'll work with what you sent then. Fisherman Guy is the original. Okay. This is one strong bird. The branch she's holding is a big log, 2 inches in diameter. Wow. Well, he's making a serious nest. Or maybe she. Okay, so now the dust spots have been removed. I'm going to run power line removal as well because I want to see if it recognizes that as a power line or this down here. Because I kind of want to get rid of that big black line over on the left. But if the program will do it for me, let's cross our fingers. No, it didn't. Okay. Well, it was a chance. It was a chance that it might work. So I would remove this thing because, yeah, see, I'm going to have to go in and do a better job zooming in, but I would remove this line and try and keep the sticks and remove the line. I would also try and remove this thing here. Okay. So when you're doing erasing like this, definitely zoom in and do a smaller bit at a time, right? So you see, I tried to do one big swash of the power line and it didn't work. So now I'm just going to do one dot at a time and see how much better job it does. See that? Kind of went funny on the edge, but I can fix that. We'll fix that in a minute. Right, so if I just make a smaller brush and just do the edge like that, it should fix it for me. Usually does a better job fixing the edge. It's not working for me now. We're getting worse. All right, let's restore. Usually if I do a bit on the edge of something like that, it does a pretty good job. So I'm going to just do it smaller like that. There we go. Okay, now, yeah, see, just little things like that. I just erase them. And you could even remove stuff like this, but this is where he's made his nest, right? Or she. Now I'm going to go back and try and just do a section. Doesn't want to remove it. Yeah, see, it doesn't want to remove it for some reason. So we could try cloning instead, all the way down at the bottom, right, at 100%. Interestingly enough, it's not telling me to select my target or my source. So select your source. And I like to have the brush, the inside of the brush, like see there's two lines on the brush, have the inside of the brush the same size as the wire. So I'm going to go at 100% along the wire. Well, see, I did too much. Okay, so I'm going to fix that. I'm going to get a bigger brush and select further away. Okay, let's try that. It does take a minute. Like it doesn't happen immediately, which I find the tool is a little bit slow as well, because you saw me paint and it hasn't done anything yet. Right, so for some reason it's painting way down there as well. So I'm not really happy with that. I'm going to lower the softness. That could help. All right, let's try that. It shouldn't be giving me a second one down below. So you see that it's kind of, you have to work with the way that the tool functions. There we go. Okay, so now we're on track. I can just keep going. There we go. So it looks like once I did the first one, it's working quicker. Okay, so now I can just go in there. Now I would get my brush smaller and take the softness down to 0 and change my source again. So I'm using the Alt Option key. So the closer you get into the edge, use a harder edge brush. See how I just painted that away like that? And get in there. Paint it away. Oops. So you got to select a new source again. So I have my finger on the Alt Option button. Yeah. I have my finger on Alt Option and I keep changing the source that I'm cloning from. Okay. So now I'm cloning from left to right. Okay. And I should come into 100%, but let's just do that. Okay. Now there's still a black spot there, right? And I haven't done a perfect job of it, but it looks pretty good, right? Looks pretty good. So now how I would deal with this black bit around the edge, right? That looks pretty good. How I would deal with this one is lower the strength to about 50%, change the source to right below on the stick, and then just kind of paint up. See, it's not lined perfectly, so I'm going to try erase instead. If the stick was straight, I could just use that method, but I'm going to try erase, and let's just see if it gets rid of the black. I'm going to get this little spot down here too. So these kinds of things, whether you do this in Luminar or Photoshop or Lightroom, anytime you're dealing with major cloning like this is a major cloning job, you have to take your time, right? There's no shortcut. Zooming in, using smaller brush strokes, doing more brush strokes, lowering the opacity in some cases will do a good job. Right, so see how that's blending nicer now? There we go. Now, in terms of this part here, I don't know what's going to happen, but let's try the erase tool and see if it makes it just look more like a stick. Okay. That kind of worked, actually. And now I can just put the stick back. There we go. And just restore the stick. Oops. There we go. So that's not too bad. And it looks like it just ends there. See that? So let's just see if we blend it a little better. Get rid of this black end here. I'm kind of happy with that. So look at the difference, right? That big thing going out, okay? Now one could argue that it's a leading line coming in, but you've already got a leading line from here, right? And you want the interaction between the bird and the nest because you can clearly see that he's doing the nest, right? Or she. So then I would do the same things, Brennan, that I did on the other birds, right? Use the structure and the details. Let's sharpen him up a little bit. Using small details, a little bit of medium details, a little bit of sharpen. Okay, and again, oh, that does a nice job on him. Can you see that? I'll come into 100%. So let's see before. I'm going to go even farther with this one. There's not as much noise in this image, so I think we can get away with a bit more here. And I'm literally just going to paint this in to him, right? Because I just want to make his head look a little sharper and his feet. Because if his head looks sharp, then the image will be perceived as sharp, okay? If the eyes are sharp, that's the same thing that applies in a portrait. If the eyes are sharp, the whole thing will be perceived as sharp. Okay? See how he's picking up a little bit of noise, but it picks up that sharpness. Okay? And I'll just do a little bit here as well on his feathers at a lower opacity. And a little bit on his tail as well, lowered opacity. Okay, and I'm going to copy this mask. So copy. Notice I didn't do the stick. I don't really want my attention going to the stick. So I'm going to give increased structure. And then just paste that mask in so it's on him. Let's zoom in. That's what it's doing. Take a moment for it to sharpen. See how it's just bringing out his feathers? Okay. So he looks sharper. When we do a vignette here, right? Again, we're going to run into that same issue because of the cropping. So I would just do a round one and come in real small, but we can't get small enough, right? I want to just have kind of a circle of light around him. So instead, I'm going to use the develop tool. Okay, so this is, again, my hack for the problem with the current problem with the vignette tool. Okay, so bring the exposure way down. And again, you have more control. So I'm going to darken the exposure. I'm actually going to lower the saturation because I don't want the saturation to go crazy. And then I'm just going to use a radial filter, right, around the bird. So remember, where the mask is red is where it's going to apply. I can make it more oval. feather it a little bit less. Now it's going to darken from there out, right? So when we go to the mask, right, we can see that we've gone too far on the darkening. Now we can just scale it back. Okay? But that's a way that you can apply, right, your mask after cropping if you want to use a radial tool. Okay, I could also use go back and paint it, right? If I get a weird brush here, or if I want to highlight the nest a little bit, I could actually come back here and say, well, I want to highlight the nest a little bit, so I'm just going to brighten this area a tiny little bit. Okay, so see what it's doing. I still think I'm going too far on that one, so let me scale it back a little. There we go. Okay, so before and after. This one actually, Brandon, might even make a really cool black and white because there's really not a lot of color here other than the sky, right? So if we convert this one to black and white, now you have the power of the original color in the image, right, that you can play with. So we can darken the sky. He's probably got some yellow and red in him. Didn't come out as dramatic as I had hoped, right? But he definitely comes out stronger that way because of the light, okay? So maybe not fully black and white, but how about we just lower some of the color in the sky, right? Let's make it a little bit closer to monochromatic, but not full monochromatic. There's another tool in Luminar that is great for doing that, and that's the high key tool. High key, which is under portraits, or you can use the dramatic tool. So dramatic will lower the saturation usually as well. Okay, so I usually do like that. Okay, so dramatic. So let's see how that's working. So dramatic really actually highlights him really well. Okay, let's just go further with it. That looks good. I can still see my circle from the develop tool. Can you see that? So I still see my circle, which tells me it's too much. So I want to go back and fix that. But I'm going to do, I'll do that next. Okay, so I'm going to go back. We don't need that. We didn't use it. So I'm still seeing that circle. So I either need to remask and just do a better job of masking, or I'm going to just soften this a little bit around this edge here. Because I'm just seeing this circle. Is that a little better? That's a little better. Okay, so Dramatic has done a nice job here. See that? And the other one I mentioned was high key. Now we've kind of gone darker, so high key might not work here, but let's give it a try. It tends to lower saturation as well. Right? So I like to use the dynamic high key as opposed to the standard. And we could give him a bit of glow. So see, it's doing the same kind of thing. It's just repeating that. I like the idea of partial monochrome on this one. So that's kind of where I would go with that one. You like that one, Brendan? Awesome. So now you've got some work to do practicing cloning. And you notice that the wire, right? I didn't take it completely out, right? But it sort of just blends in with the sticks now. And I got rid of the part that sticks out, right? We could go in and get rid of these signs too. And honestly, I probably would because they're really distracting and take away from the whole nature thing. And I get that it's sort of, this contrast of he's in, a natural subject in a nesting in this, whatever this power station or something is. But the words themselves are sort of distracting, right? When you have these letters and words there. So, oh, look at what a good job that did, right? So I would take these out as well. Any of you that are watching that actually use Lightroom as well as Luminar, Adobe has come out with a major update to both Lightroom and Photoshop, and I will be doing videos on those. And if you have my Lightroom course, I will be doing videos for the course as well. And for you guys in the Luminar course, of course, for those of you that are in the Luminar course, I still have some additional videos to add as well. I'll be doing the clone tool, the HDR, the noise list, and as they come out and release the additional modules or extensions, I'll be adding videos for those as well. Okay. Let's see. Danelle says, patience and knowing what the tools do. And that's part of what I teach in the course as well. I don't know if you have, do you have our course, Danelle, this particular course? I literally go through every single tool, what it does, example images, you get my raw files to use, and it's really great for learning the tool. Can I lighten his eyes? Yes, I could lighten his eyes if I go back to the bird. He's pretty small and it's pretty cropped in already, so I don't know how much I can get there lightening his eyes, but let's try. Okay, so this one I might be tempted to use the dodge and burn tool. Remember to keep it low, like 10% always. I'm just waiting for it to load the image to sharpen. Once it sharpens. Awesome. Thanks, Danelle. They make a great tool package together, because that my workflow, Danelle, is that Lightroom is my major tool, and that's where my catalog and all my images live, and then I use Luminar for my images as a plugin. Okay? Also, just a reminder for those of you who are in the Luminar Neo course, please check your email. I'm going to send out another reminder that next Monday is our next live Q&A session for students of the course only. You need to be registered for that on Zoom, and you can send in your questions and or your images ahead of time. So if you don't want your images to show here on YouTube, you can submit them and have them private for just inside the course. So I can't send you that link here because it's only for people who are taking the course. But check your email, and I'm going to resend that just to remind everybody. So I'm just doing a tiny, like, lighten on his eye. You really have to wait for this tool to sort of catch up. So I'm just doing it once or twice. I'm not sure if it's doing anything. Oh, yeah. Yep, it is doing. So see how I'm just going over it? Little by little, and it's lightening little by little. Let's go a little higher with the strength. I'm going to be here all night. No, I don't want to update that. Thank you very much. Okay, so there. I did lighten his eye a little bit. So let's try. Let's see what happens if I go. There we go. I don't usually paint or use this tool at a higher strength, but for his eye, it's working. So there you go. Good final last thing, brighten his eye. And just a reminder of how to submit your images. There is the link again. So I'm just going to come back over here. Crazy hair. All right. The category for Monday is there are a couple of new videos, so we'll kind of just do a survey of what people want to do. If there's lots of questions, we'll just dive right into those. Otherwise, we may watch one or two of the new lessons that I added on some of the new things, including the masking AI, because I feel like there may be some questions on that. And so we'll do the same format as what we did for the other ones. So you'll see a portion of a video, and then we'll do some Q&A. And then if there's time, we'll edit some of the images that people have submitted as well. I got somebody to buy Neo using our link, and hopefully he'll join in on some of the fun. Awesome. I hope so too. Thanks so much, Holly, always for your support. Don't know how to say it. Thank you. I'm going to send another email again tomorrow, Kevin. So if you missed it, I'll send another one just to remind you if you haven't already signed up for it with the link. Plus, there are some new people that just signed up for the course. So I'll make sure that everybody has the link for it. So one final note that I want to let everybody know, we talked about moving this live over to Saturdays. So this will be the last Neo one on Wednesday. We're going to have one more next Wednesday, which will be Lightroom. Then we're going to take the following Wednesday off, and we're going to move to Saturday. Okay, so the schedule will be next week, which is the 26th, and then the next one will be Saturday. Is it the 2nd, Rob? I don't have my calendar open. The next one will be Saturday, which I believe is the 2nd. Let's open my calendar here. And we're actually going to go back to doing them all together. So instead of alternating Luminar and, sorry, my bad, it's not the 2nd, it's the 5th of November will be the next one. So we're going to go back to putting them together. So rather than having Luminar one week and Lightroom the next week, it'll just be editing and come every week then, because whatever software you're using, that's what I'm going to demonstrate for you. All right. So we're going to put everybody together, and there's always something to learn for everybody. So thanks so much, everybody. Yeah, we had some great pictures tonight. I agree, Holly. Some really nice bird images. So the next time we'll see the Luminar folks will be November 5th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So put that in your calendar. It's 3 p.m. Eastern time. If you have a different time zone, it's 1 p.m. Mountain time, noon Pacific time. And what's time zone are you in, Danelle? And I'll give you your time zone. Thanks, Deb. Yeah, I think the texture worked really well there as well. So 3 p.m. Eastern. If you're on Eastern Daylight, then 3 o'clock for you to know. Yep, 3 o'clock on November, March. Okay, I think I need food, everybody. So I'm going to sign out. Take care, and we'll see some of you on the 5th. And if you want to pick up our Lightroom one next week, I'll see you next week, still on Wednesday at the same time on Wednesdays. So take care. Until next time.